Hey, this is Mike Robbins. Thanks so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. Hope you're doing well, you, your family, your team, everyone around you. As we roll through, as I'm recording this, what is it, middle of July? I want to talk today about human connection and really prioritizing human connection. Look, I mean, so much of my work over the last 25 years has really been about human connection, whether we're talking about appreciation or authenticity or compassion or trust, psychological safety, connection, engagement, inclusion, belonging. I mean, all of this at the core of it, it's really about human connection. And I believe that human connection is at the core of so many things that are important to us, right? Our relationships, our well-being, our families, our success, whether it's, in sales or business or teams or culture, all the things that I ultimately talk about and have researched and written about come down to human connection, even the human connection we have with ourselves. Um, and look, I mean, I've talked a lot about this here on the show over especially the last 5.5 years since the pandemic hit. Um, and as we went through that whole experience several years ago and kind of coming out of it and the whole way that life changed then and is still different today than it was 6, 7, 10, 12 years ago. And look, we all are living it. Whatever kind of work you do, wherever you work for a big corporation or big organization of some kind, you work for a small to medium-sized business or organization, you run your own, very small practice or, solopreneurship of whatever you do. Maybe you're retired, maybe you're working at home, maybe there's a lot of different ways that we all work, and most of us do many things, both personally and professionally. But the way that we work, the way that we communicate, the way that we engage with each other has significantly changed and continues to change significantly, right? I mean, just today, I recorded a podcast interview with someone this morning. I just had a Zoom call with somebody else. I'm recording this podcast episode now. I mean, this is often how my life is when I'm here at home. I'm doing work, I'm writing, I'm emailing, I'm texting, I'm creating content, right? I'm going to get on a plane tomorrow to fly to San Juan, Puerto Rico for the first time in my life to speak at a conference that's happening there on Thursday morning well, the conference is happening for a couple of days, but I'm speaking Thursday morning and then I'll come home and again, if you look at your daily cadence and daily work and how you engage with the world, I was sending some notes on LinkedIn earlier today and Facebook and responding to some emails and some text messages. And again, so much of just the foundational logistical way that we work is different today than it was, say, a decade ago. I mean, even just a year or two ago. I mean, even the fact that I'm recording this podcast on video with you, as simple as that is, and I know people have been doing video podcasts for quite some time now, but this is episode 414 of this podcast. It's changed names. We started it in 2016. It was called Bring Your Whole Self to Work. We changed the name in 2019 to We're All in This Together around the titles of my two most recent books, but we didn't even really start doing video until last year. And I kind of resisted it until now. And, that's the way that a lot of people consume podcast content. You may be watching this video on YouTube or seeing a clip of it on social media or something. And that, had you go open it in Apple or Spotify or whatever, and now you're listening to it as you're working out or as you're walking the dog or doing the dishes or driving to work or whatever the case may be. There's so many aspects of life and how we engage and how we communicate and connect that have changed. And as I travel around the country, as the world is now, opened up more than ever since the pandemic, right? We're not still dealing with the reality of what we were dealing with in the midst of the pandemic, but so many things have changed significantly. Our ability to work remotely and work from anywhere and do different things and for teams to connect and be assembled distributively. Not that that didn't happen in a pre-pandemic world, but the way that it happens now is so much different. And so many of the conversations that I have with leaders and teams and people when I'm out speaking, when I'm out, leading workshops, I'm at offsites for leadership teams, I'm at, sales conferences or leadership conferences or all hands meetings, or when I'm talking to people, what we're often talking about is the challenge of human connection, the lack of human connection, the difficulty it is in connecting with other humans in a real way. And again, not that we don't want to, not that we don't know how to, not that we're not doing it at all, but it's just like, how do we do that authentically, effectively? And why is it important? I mean, have been thinking about this a lot in recent years. And I think on an individual human level, on a just living our lives and managing our kids and our dogs and our medical appointments and our laundry and all the things, working from home and working remotely is amazing, right? We can do it from anywhere. We don't have to get dressed up and drive into the office or get on the train or the bus or the whatever and park and then, deal with buying lunch and right. We can be home. We can work in our sweatpants or our pajamas. We can, do calls at odd times of the day and night if we want to. We can go pick the kids up from school. We can go to the gym. We can walk the dog and change the laundry. And, when the Amazon package arrives and all those things that are wonderful. And it takes a toll on our ability to connect and communicate and collaborate with our teammates. We don't see each other in the parking lot or at the restaurant or in the cafeteria at work or in the hallway. We don't have the meeting after the meeting as we're walking back to our desks after we've met in the conference room, right? We don't have those unscripted moments where I can just pop into your office or send you a text. Do you have a minute? Can I swing by your cube and talk to you? Again, depending on the environment in which we work. And again, even before the pandemic and before we were all working remotely, lots of the clients that I work with, big companies, the Googles and Wells Fargos and Microsofts of the world, they had people all over the world. So it wasn't like everybody was in the same office or the same physical location. They also had the technology ability even 10, 15 years ago for people to work remotely, which was happening, although not as much as today. So it's not that this is a new phenomenon. It's just a more challenging one because the technology is better, because we really got used to it during the pandemic, especially because it does work for our personal lives and is still a way in which it's a selling point when you're trying to hire people. Hey, you can work remotely. You can work from home a few days a week. You can do this. You can be far from the office. You don't have to live in New York City or San Francisco or Chicago or London or what. You can live where you want to live and still work. There is an impact, though, not only on our ability to connect and communicate and collaborate and to get into rooms and whiteboard and do the things we need to do and have those unscripted moments and off the cuff conversations and find out about people and what's going on in their lives and what they did over the weekend, and except for, clicking on to the Zoom or Teams meeting at 10 a.m. and talking until 11 a.m. and then clicking off and then doing that back to back to back. There's also an impact on our well-being, right? The former Surgeon General of the United States, Dr. Vivek Murthy, in 2023, he really declared loneliness as an epidemic in the US. And at that time, and I'm sure it's still true now, just 2 years later, the data showed that loneliness was as significant of a health risk as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Think about that. According to Gallup, employees who feel connected to their team and their leader are 3 times more likely to be engaged at work. So connection matters. And when we don't have a lot of human connection, I'm not saying we can't be connected when we're working virtually or remotely. We absolutely can. It's just harder, right? And you've heard me talk about psychological safety for years. It's one of the pillars in my book. We're all in this together, right? Google's Project Aristotle that came out about 10 years ago now. They did 3 years of research and really looking at what's essential for teams to thrive, for teams to operate at the highest level. It was this sense of psychological safety. And psychological safety is what? Group trust. It means the group is safe enough for what? Speaking up, taking risks, making mistakes, even failing, knowing I'm not going to get shamed, ridiculed, kicked out of the group simply because I make a mistake or I fail or I have a different opinion. And in order for us to build psychological safety, it requires a certain level of human connection, right? We can't really create psychological safety without human connection. Now, again, human connection does not 100% of the time mean we have to be together with each other in person. It just makes it way easier to connect with other humans when we're together in real time. We do a lot of asynchronous communication these days, right? We've been doing email for years. We do a lot of texting. My wife, Michelle, and I, as I've talked about here on the show recently, we do a lot of voice texting. I actually like asynchronous communication. I like email. I like text. I like voice text. Not exclusively, but there's value to that. There, again, just efficiency of communication in life. I don't always have time to have a live conversation. Not that I don't want to, but I need to communicate something. So I'll send an email. So I'll leave a voice text. It's a one-way communication. Then you get to listen to it or read it on your own time and respond back. Now, look, with so much asynchronous communication, especially email and then texting and messaging on LinkedIn and, Facebook and, and Slack and Teams and all the different platforms we use, there's so many inboxes for us to check and to get back to. It can be overwhelming. And we don't even have time for like real time in person human connection communication because we're so busy responding to all the asynchronous communication, but it's there. So, why do we avoid connection, or what gets in the way? What makes human connection hard? Well, there's a bunch of things, right? I mean, some of it is just the busyness of work and life, the distraction, the logistics of it. Like I have a couple of friends and colleagues that live on the East Coast and I live on the West Coast, like the 3 hour time difference. Or if you have someone who lives further away, there's some people I do business with and people I communicate with regularly who are in Asia or in Europe. It's like I'm going to India later next month, and it's like India from the US, half the year it's a 12 and a half hour time difference. The other half from the Bay Area, I should say, the other half of the year it's 13 and a half hours. That's a weird, right? The half, by the way, I found out when I was in India is because they had an argument about time zones in India. And instead of creating multiple time zones in the country, they created one for the whole country. And then they just made it on the half hour. Anyway, that's a separate thing. It always confused me, but I found out when I was in Bangalore last back in 2023. That said, time differences can make it really challenging, right? Again, the nature of people's work. I mean, again, one of the things that's nice about working remotely and having all these technology platforms, we can make it work around our schedule, around what's the cadence of our life, my sleeping patterns, right? My kids, and right? I mean, there's some general understanding that business happens between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. local time, wherever we are, but that doesn't seem to hold true in the same way it used to hold true, because of our ability to connect and communicate all the different ways. There's a transactional nature these days of business, of life, of, right? Click on the Zoom, click on the Teams meeting. We have the conversation, click off to the next thing, click, text, email. Did you do this? Get that, pay for this, do this, send me the thing, right? And that's always been the case, but it feels like the pace of life, the pace of business, the pace of which we operate, even more intense these days. That there's that just transactional, right? And all these tech shortcuts, which are great and do make it amazing. We can text and not talk. We can voice text. We can email and not talk. We can get on Zoom instead of getting in our car and driving downtown to meet up, instead of getting on an airplane and flying across the country. That's beautiful. And it does lack a certain connection. It does have an impact on our mental health. Right when I get done recording this, I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to drive a few miles south and pick up a friend of mine who's coming up from the city to meet up with me, and we're going to go for a hike. And I'm really looking forward to it. He's a friend, he's a colleague. We're going to spend a few hours just out in nature, talking, hiking. I'm going to drop him off back at the ferry, and then I'm going to head over to the East Bay for my men's group. We get together in person couple times a month, have a meal, sit down, do our men's group. And it's like I now have the direct experience. We did our men's group on Zoom over COVID because we couldn't all get together safely. And it was better than nothing. I was glad we were able to still connect and still share and still check in and still talk about life. And a lot of our conversations in those days were reflecting on how hard it was and how weird it was to be living during lockdown and not be able to see each other and not connect. And then eventually we met over here at my house and a few of the other men's houses in our backyard, socially distanced. And that was better than Zoom, but it still wasn't the same. But now I can get together with my men's group and the men in that group that I've known for many years. We can hug each other and we can laugh and we can have a meal together. It's different. And in my judgment, it's much, much better in terms of human connection. Now, look, the reality of life and business these days, we're not going to get together all the time. It's not feasible. It's not realistic. It's not even necessary. But what can we do to start prioritizing human connection? What does that actually mean? What does that look like? I mean, it's going to look different in your life than my life, in your work and my work. But can we figure out some ways to prioritize it? I've been trying to, not perfectly and not in some holier than thou way, but like get together with people when I can in person, human to human. Now, I can't always do that. I have people and friends and colleagues and people all over the world, but even scheduling time on Zoom or on the phone where we can talk like human to human. So prioritizing those kind of live connections as much as we can, seeing what we can do in the context of the people that we work with, in the context of the people that we live with, getting together in person when possible. And if not possible, can we connect live on Zoom, on Teams, on FaceTime, on the phone or WhatsApp or whatever it is? And then talking about it. It's not always necessary. Again, Michelle and I have found a really beautiful way, living in the same house, being together, married for now 20 years, together for almost 25. I love sending her voice text messages in the morning and she sends them back, and we check in with each other that way, in a way that works for the cadence of our life and when I get up and when she gets up and what's going on. And we often both take a walk in the morning by ourselves, which we like to do. And as part of our walk, we will leave each other voice texts, just checking in about the day, about what's going on, about what we're thinking, what we're feeling, whatever. And then we have a separate protocol that we do that I think I shared a few weeks ago, where we share some things that we're grateful for and that we love about each other. And it's a sweet way to connect, even though a little weird and a little utilizing of technology in a different way, less human connection. We could have those conversations in real time with each other, which we do sometimes, but we actually found it to be this sweet, more efficient, interesting way to get creative with how we're connecting. And again, there's not a one size fits all. And this conversation is not about we have to be together 24/7 and put our devices down. And no, we have to live in the real world that we live in and adapt and adjust based on who we're in relationship with and who we're connecting with and who we're communicating with, but prioritizing the human connection of it. Human connection is about presence over perfection. It's about showing up for real. It's about lowering the waterline on the iceberg, as I like to say. It's about leading with curiosity. How are you doing? How are you really doing? What's going on? It's creating that sense of trust one-to-one, that sense of psychological safety collectively. It's expressing our appreciation for people, like authentically, vulnerably. I mean, all things, again, that I know to be true, I know are important, I've been writing about and speaking about for years, and sometimes because of the pace of life, I forget. I get stuck. I get resistant to. I don't feel like I have the time or the space, or I don't want to be vulnerable, or I don't want to go there, right? Sometimes it can take a little bit longer to make that human connection. It doesn't have to. Sometimes it requires a little more depth, a little more presence, a little more awareness, a little more curiosity than maybe we think we have in the moment. But there's so many benefits to it. The meaningfulness, the connection, the well-being, the trust, the mental and emotional well-being that comes from it, the social engagement. Again, even if we're more introverted. And look, it's okay to spend time by ourselves. It's okay to choose, I want to be alone, or I need to focus on this solitary work. Therefore, I'm going to work this day from home, and no, I'm going to block off chunks of my calendar where I'm not available because I just need to do deeper work. That's important too. But that doesn't mean that human connection isn't important. If we're a leader of any kind, if we're in sales or promotion of any kind, if we're trying to collaborate cross-functionally with anybody, human connection matters. And I get it, it's hard, especially these days, but I think there's so much benefit to us prioritizing this. So what can you do right now in your life, with your work? How can you prioritize human connection today, this week, in a real way? Again, there's not a one size fits all. You got to look at yourself, look at your life, look at your relationships, look at your work, and map it out and go, where can I prioritize connecting human to human here? Where can I lower the waterline on my iceberg? Where can I ask a question and be more curious? Where could I take a asynchronous communication and maybe turn it into a live communication on the phone, on Zoom or Teams, even in person? Where could I take the extra step of making plans with someone to see them? You know, it's often kind of like exercising. Look, it's not like every single time we get together with other human beings, we're always grateful that we did. That's right. Sometimes you get together with someone, or you go to an event, or you go to a thing, or you show up at the office and you go, why did I do that? I spent all day on Zoom. What was I doing? Or that wasn't the best use. I get that. But in general, when we do prioritize human connection, when we do make the effort to see the person we haven't seen in a while, to pick up the phone and call someone we've been thinking about. Most often we don't regret it, right? We often regret the things that we don't do, the calls that we don't make, the time that we don't spend with the people that we care about. And yes, we have to prioritize things. And yes, we can't see everybody all the time, every day. Like that doesn't, but is there someone you've been thinking about who you want to check in with? And maybe it starts with a text message or an email, but leads to a live conversation, leads to an in-person connection with that person. Where can we prioritize the presence of getting together? Where can we put our phones down and sit on the couch or around the dinner table with the people that we love? Where can we let the people who matter to us most know that they matter to us? I don't think we're going to regret that. So I leave you with those questions, right? Success isn't really about performance. It's about people. It's about connection. It's not really a soft skill. It's the foundation of trust, of resilience, of thriving together. It's the essence of what this show and all of my work is about. It's really at the core of all of us being in it together. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. As always, this is one way I get to connect with you, even though it's asynchronous and not in real time, but I appreciate you engaging. There's links in the show notes where you can learn more about me and my work and connect with me on social media. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's links down below in the description. Best place to learn more about me and my work is at our website, which is mike-robbins.com. We always love it when you leave a rating or a review or share episodes with other people if you think it would resonate with them. And as I often say, as we close, keep bringing your whole self to work, to life. And remember, we're all in this thing together.